So today I'm going to be talking about the life of a photographer, and I'm a photographer myself. So I'm going to start with an introduction, and you wouldn't think that photography would be that hard, but it's actually a very complicated skill to get. Anyways, there's an extensive amount of knowledge that goes into photography, which can include ISO, aperture, white balance, everything. The first thing that we're going to talk about is learning photography, and it occurs in 4 stages. So what I did when I was in school was we started by learning the history of photography. And then after that, we learned the basics about the camera, we learned about lighting, and then we ended up going and practicing in the field. So the history of photography started in the 1820s by I can't really pronounce this, Nicephore Niepce, and he started by making a lithograph printmaking. The photo took 2 days to expose. It's a really interesting photo, actually. It's looking out into the outside, and it's a bunch of buildings. You don't really see much in it, but you can tell that it's outside. In 1837, Louis Daguerre made a revolution in the photography world, and he ended up creating the first photo that didn't fade, because all the other photos before that had faded. So this type of photo took 30 minutes, which was very big, because before that it would take days to get a photo. In 1913, the 35 millimeter camera came out, and I'm sure a lot of you would know that's one of the most popular cameras out there. A lot of the film cameras are 35 millimeter cameras. In 1984, Canon ended up coming out with the first digital still camera, and that's what we're using today. And we've really branched off of that to create some of the best photography that there is out there today. Anyways, so we're going to go on to the basics of a camera, and it starts with the shutter speed. And when you are taking a photo, if you want to capture a still moment, as for, sports or moving cars, anything moving, and you want to capture that still, you're going to want to set your shutter speed to a higher amount. And so then you also have your ISO, and that's going to be how much it measures the sensitivity of an image sensor. You also have your aperture, which is how big or wide, or how much light you're letting into your sensor, or how much light you're letting into your lens. And so if you're letting in more light, then that's going to mean you have a bigger aperture, and it's going to be a smaller number. So let's say I want to focus on something very small, like something macro, and let's say it's a bee on a flower. So I'm going to be focusing on that bee, and that's going to be what's in focus, but then everything behind it is going to be out of focus, very blurry. So it's focusing on one specific object. That's a big aperture, a wide aperture. And then if you want a small aperture, you're going to be focusing on everything in the object, and that means that your number is going to be bigger. So that's going to be, instead of an aperture, you're going to be having an aperture of usually 9.0 or higher. Okay, and so also when you're taking photos, it's really important to know about the lighting. Like, the lighting can either make or break a photo. So there's so many different lights out there. When you're taking photos outside, the best time to take photos would be either at sunset or sunrise, and those are called the golden hours. So those create a very soft light, and they're much better than the midday where it's just creating shadows on everything. The inside lighting it includes strobes, flashes, everything to create the lighting that would be outside but inside. And there's so much different stuff that you can do with indoor flashes. You can even use them outdoor if you wanted. When you are practicing out in the field, this is one of the most important steps, because this is how you really learn what you're doing. Like, I learned all of my photography from just practicing. Practice makes perfect. A lot of people like to practice, with portraits, architecture, macro. I started with macro photography, and then I ended up growing from there, and now I'm a portrait photographer. So you're going to be, learning about the controls and how to use them and the best way to use them, best lighting. And the important thing to know is you're not going to get the perfect photo every time. You're going to have to take multiple photos in order to get one good photo. You can take 1,000 photos and get one good photo. So don't expect to take a perfect photo every time. And also another important thing to know is you don't have to have expensive equipment to be a good photographer. You can get really good photos with minimal amount of equipment. I started off with a 50 millimeter lens, and it was a couple $100, and that did me so well, and I got such awesome photos and was able to really expand from there. So conclusion is, it's important to learn the basics of a camera in order to have a good understanding of how to take a good photo. The lighting is key when it comes to taking a good photo, and practicing out in the field will give you a good experience on art and taking a good photo. Thank you.